朋友们，今天看到一段 CNBC 对美国 Scale AI 公司创始人、华裔天才青年企业家亚历山大·王的采访。采访中，他谈到中国的 DeepSeek 的模型水平已经与美国最好的 AI 模型不相上下。虽然美国看上去还是处于领先地位，又对中国实施芯片出口管制，但中国的实力和追赶的速度绝不容忽视。他强调，中美的 AI 竞争是一场美国必须要赢的战争，呼吁美国政府释放美国的能源资源，以推动人工智能的发展。我们看看他是怎么说的。
I want to go straight to what we were just talking about off camera, which is the idea of where the U.S. is on AI versus China, because you have some very surprising statistics that I think will probably, frankly, freak out some of the viewers.
So, yeah, first of all, the AI race and the AI war between U.S. and China, I think, is one of the most important issues of today. We took out a full-page ad on the Washington Post on Tuesday saying that, America must win the AI war. And so this sort of relative race in AI between the U.S. and China is critical. Today, we released Humanity's Last Exam, which is a new evaluation or benchmark of AI models that we produced by getting, math, physics, biology, chemistry professors to provide the hardest questions they could possibly imagine that are relevant to their recent research to really put the test to the models. To give you a sense, no model is getting above 10% on this test. That being said, what we found is that DeepSeek, which is the leading Chinese AI lab, their model is actually the top performing or roughly on par with the best American models, which are O1 from
Okay, so
OpenAI.
I think we have been all under the impression that the U.S. was way ahead of China as it relates to AI, in large part because we have access to, NVIDIA GPUs and chips and other things that supposedly the Chinese do not have. I keep hearing from people all week, from Chinese AI executives, that they say, we're so close. And by the way, we're doing it with one hand tied behind our back. Our algos are better. We're actually going to figure out how to do this, do it better than the U.S. and in even a more energy efficient way because we don't need these super powerful chips. Are they happen to be right?
There's two things happening. First, it is true. It has been true for a long time that the United States has been ahead. And that's been true for, maybe the past decade. That being said, the very recent event on Christmas Day, about a month ago, DeepSeek released a model, which, by the way, I think is symbolic that the Chinese lab releases, an earth-shattering model on Christmas Day when, the rest of us are sort of celebrating the holiday. And they released it to much fanfare, and then they followed up with their reasoning model, DeepSeek R1, which is the one that we evaluated as top of the leaderboard. The reality is yes and no. So, the Chinese labs, they have more H100s than people think.
And these are the highest powered NVIDIA chips that they were not supposed to have.
Yes. My understanding is that DeepSeek has about 50,000 H100s, which they can't talk about, obviously, because it is against the export controls that the United States has put in place. And I think it is true that, I think they have more chips than other people expect, but also on a go-forward basis, they are going to be limited by the chip controls and the export controls that we have in place.
How do you, you work with everybody, so I don't know if it's fair or unfair, but how do you stack rank these large language models and who ultimately is going to be a winner? Or are they all so close and it gets commoditized?
The interesting thing that we see right now, so we actually specialize in this. We've produced our SEAL evaluations, our safety evaluations and alignment labs, evaluations which measure across many different dimensions. We measure across math capabilities, coding capabilities, multilingual capabilities, and reasoning capabilities, and many different dimensions, including tool use and agent capabilities. And what we see is different models are better at different things. So it's hard to put a clear stack ranking among all the models. For example, the OpenAI models are extremely good at reasoning, but the Anthropic models might be really good at code. And sort of there's a diversity of capabilities of the models. That being said, I think what we're seeing in general is the space is becoming more competitive, not less competitive.
I keep hearing from business leaders here that they're all playing around with, OpenAI, or they're playing around with Claude, which is the Anthropic model, or they're playing around with Gemini, et cetera. And then they're going and using Llama. They're going to find some open source version to try to get close to what they could approximate these other guys doing because of just the different price points of these things. Do you think that's the future of this?
I think
like in a Linux world.
There's definitely a dimension. It comes down to ultimately the level of capabilities and intelligence that are required for your use case. I think ultimately what we're going to see is, what we do with all of the leading labs, including OpenAI and Google DeepMind and Meta and many others, is continuing to push the frontier and push the boundaries. And so how do we leverage data, given that, as an industry, we've sort of run out of publicly available data? How do we generate new data to keep pushing the frontiers? And our belief is that, advanced capabilities are going to enable incredible use cases where you're going to be willing to pay for those increased capabilities. But for the more simplistic use cases, those will probably go more towards open source or more basic models.
We've been talking all morning about Stargate and the debate happening on Twitter between Sam Altman and Elon Musk about whether they really have $100 billion or $500 billion. Satya Nadella was sitting in your chair just yesterday saying he's got $80 billion, his money's real. He took to Twitter. What do you make of all of this? You know all these players.
So much is on Twitter anyway. So I'm not sure.
Or X, we should say.
Or yeah, yes. X. But I think one thing that is very real, regardless of sort of Stargate specifically as a program, is that the United States is going to need a huge amount of computational capacity and a huge amount of infrastructure. So this was actually we wrote a letter to the Trump administration on recommendations on how to ensure that the U.S. stays ahead. And one of them was really around infrastructure. We need to unleash U.S. energy to enable this AI boom. And that's clearly what we're seeing right now, which is, in addition to the Stargate program, many of the major AI companies and major clouds are going to be looking to build giant data centers. So
the reason I asked this about the different companies doing this, do you ultimately think we need 5, 6, 7 companies all trying to build frontier models? Or, there's been a talk forever that, in a different, if Lena Khan hadn't been running the FTC, would have Amazon wanted to buy Anthropic already, for example? Or would have Microsoft bought OpenAI? Or would have some of these folks, so there wouldn't be as many, everybody competing against each other in the same way? I don't know, maybe you think the competition's great. I just don't know how long term, how many models there ultimately will be like that.
Our view is actually that this is potentially going to be one of the greatest markets or the greatest industries ever. Right now, let's say there's between 10 and $20 billion of LLM-based revenue. And if you believe that we're actually on a track towards superintelligence or AGI, then it stands to reason that that's going to go to $1 trillion or more of revenue. And so if you're looking at a market that's going to go from, let's say, 10 billion to 1 trillion over who knows how many years, I tend to believe a fewer number of years. I think we're sort of in the 2 to 4 range.
2 to 4 to get to AGI. And what's your version of AGI?
I think, obviously there's many definitions. The definition I believe in is our powerful AI systems that are able to use a computer just like you or I could, and could use all the tools that a computer could, and could basically be a remote worker in the most capable way.
看了一下亚历山大王的履历，不得了，天才少年，开挂的人生。父母都是从中国移民美国的物理学家。王1997年在美国出生，从小酷爱数学和计算机编程。中学时代就代表美国参加数学奥赛和物理奥赛，并打进决赛。10几岁就在 Quora 当软件程序员，后来进了麻省理工学计算机和数学。2016年退学，和人一起创立了 Scale AI， 目前身价20亿美元。谷歌前 CEO 埃里克·施密特说过，中美 AI 竞争是一场输不起的竞赛。现在亚历山大王更是直言，这就是一场美国必须要赢的战争。目前人工智能领域的确是中美竞争的一个主战场，是一个角力场，双方都在倾注自己最优秀的资源，一争高下。亚历山大王说的没错，这就是一场没有硝烟的战争。对于全世界在这个领域唯二的玩家中国和美国来说，都输不起。因为 AI 不仅仅是一项技术创新，它已经成为国家安全、经济增长和全球影响力的关键支柱。你想想，现在哪个行业不牵涉人工智能？制造、金融、医疗、自动驾驶等等，谁在 AI 上领先，谁就掌握了未来经济发展的主导权。谁落后，就可能在未来几十年的产业革命中失去竞争力。不仅仅是商业， 军事上也离不开 AI， 无人机作战、情报分析、网络安全。谁要是在 AI 上落后，只能被动挨打。AI 上的代差可不是单纯依靠加大人力投入，或者是做好思想动员可以弥补的。如果在 AI 军事技术上被对手压倒，可能导致未来战争的失衡。而且现在科技霸权越来越是全球影响力的重要筹码，谁掌握 AI， 谁就掌握了全球技术霸权，从而掌握全球话语权。说实话，看到像亚历山大王这样的华裔青年，一口一个我们美国我们美国的，虽然明白他就是个美国人，但感觉还是很那个啥。华人智商高，又注重理工科的培养，国际奥林匹克竞赛就有一句笑话，说是能打败中国人的只有中国人。2023年的数学奥赛，中美分列冠亚军，美国队6位队员全是华裔。这样的奇观2016年的化学奥赛也出现过，美国队6位选手全部是华裔。这位亚历山大王也是小小年纪就代表美国参加奥赛了。想想要是所有的华人人才都能为我所用，那中国都不必像美国那样去挖全球人才，光靠自己人都足以制胜，基本上没有其他国家什么事了。